Hi, my name is Farah and I work in the advocacy team at the Carbon Literacy Project. You may already know a little bit about what we do. People generally attending a carbon literacy course are empowered to recognise carbon reduction opportunities within their job roles and wider community. So upon completing a course, people feel more confident to act on and communicate the issues around the climate crisis and take action. People generally across organisations embed this across their organisation, and that cascading behaviour change feels very real. Today, we shine a light on the finance sector. Indeed, with record levels of greenhouse gas emissions and record levels of weather-related impacts, costs and financial losses, climate change can no longer be ignored. We know that its physical, political and economic financial implications will only worsen. Financial institutions today need urgently to recognise the risks of climate change and understand the risk and to value opportunity, which is why at Carbon Literacy Project, we aim to create more resources to help better inform finance institutions on how to decarbonise their emissions across their services. In this video today, I'm joined by Rachael Anderson, who is an education consultant at Anthesis Group, a leading global sustainability advisory and solutions firm. Today, we wanted to find out a little bit more about the training that they've conducted to date across the financial sector. So let's get stuck in. Thanks so much for being here today, Rachael. I suppose I'll just start off with my first question, if that's okay. Perhaps a little bit of context around your carbon literacy training that you've offered to date.
Yeah, fab. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be speaking with you today. So to set the scene about carbon literacy that we offer at Anthesis, I should probably just tell you a little bit more about Anthesis. So we have an expertise in analysing, designing and implementing sustainability, ESG and net zero programmes. And we've worked with about 4,000 organisations across the world across the last 10 years. We've just had our 10-year anniversary. And one of the offerings within this space is education. And it's something that we do have a good focus on because it's so important for the sustainable transition. We need to embed new thinking, embed a culture change, give people new skills. So it's something that we really like to focus on. And that's where carbon literacy comes in for us. So in the UK, carbon literacy was actually our flagship offering. It's the first thing we rolled out, and we've been partnered with the Carbon Literacy Project for about 18 months to 2 years. Whilst I've been at Anthesis, I've been leading that partnership, and it's been great. I've really enjoyed it, and I feel like we've achieved a lot together. So for the carbon literacy that we offer, because Anthesis works one-on-one with different organisations, we haven't as much done courses in specific sectors or communities. We tend to do one-on-one courses and make them bespoke for individual organisations. And that's meant that we've been able to work in lots of different sectors, a couple of examples being agriculture and the automotive industry, and also a lot in finance. So Anthesis as a whole has some really great relationships within the financial space, and we've done quite a lot of thought leadership in the space as well. So that's meant we've been able to connect with quite a few financial institutions and roll out carbon literacy to them. A few examples being Palatine Private Equity, who I think you're going to be talking to at some point this month too, Agco Finance, who are a agricultural lender, and then also a leading Middle Eastern bank. So we've rolled out bespoke programs for all of them, and they've been really, really exciting projects to work on.
Wow, that sounds really great, Rachael, and quite a broad kind of offering really under quite widely the financial services as well. So that's really exciting to hear about. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about like how the training is actually been delivered, a little bit more around that.
Yeah, sure. So if we kind of go back to when we started with carbon literacy, we started rolling it out fully live in workshops. So we would cover the full 8 hours or full day worth of training, but we'd usually split it into, 2 half-day workshops or something like that. Because we started carbon literacy just after the pandemic, this was mainly done virtually, but we have moved into more face-to-face stuff recently, which has been a lot of fun to do. And because it is a lot of workshop time, particularly when you're doing it remotely, we try to make it as interactive and collaborative and practical as possible. so you're not kind of just being talked at through a screen for 8 hours, and people can really take hold of the content and make it their own. One barrier we were getting a little bit with that is the time commitment, particularly where we do work with some quite big organizations or ones that have quite complex operations, for example, in manufacturing or finance, that kind of thing. So we started to explore e-learning, and since then we've actually created a whole platform and lots of different e-learning resources. And within carbon literacy, that kind of covers the more factual, fundamental content that sometimes when you're talking through it, it's a bit sciencey, so it is a little bit drier anyway. So putting that into e-learning firstly means that it can be a bit more interactive. You can create tools and tasks so people can play about with it. But it also means that the first half of the training can be done kind of at the learner's own pace. They can do a bit, pause, go away, do something else, come back, make it more accessible, particularly when you look at other languages as well. And then another benefit of that also means that all the really great collaborative content and bespoke content can be saved for a follow-on workshop. So that workshop afterwards is pretty much all discussion based. There's not much of us talking at people, so it makes it really fun to do as well. And this approach has been very, very, very popular with people in the financial space. So people in this industry tend to have pretty manic schedules, and they can be kind of ever-changing schedules. An important call can come in and you have to drop everything and go. Deals can move quite quickly. So this approach really, really helps enable carbon literacy in the financial space, because people can do that first bit at their own pace. And then the second bit is that more action planning side that is really relevant for their role anyway.
Brilliant. It sounds like you've found a way to kind of overcome those challenges and still keep it quite engaging
Yes.
for the sector as well. So that's really good news. And I suppose as well, just another question of why do you think this kind of training is important for the finance sector?
Yeah, I am a very big advocate of education in the finance sector. The level of influence that this sector has is huge. And it's something sometimes people don't really realise until they've worked with people in this space. And we do hear a lot about the negative sides of this. You hear about banks financing fossil fuels, that kind of thing. And that is something that does need to be tackled. And that is a good reason for education. But I like to think more about the power that the financial sector has in the green transition. We can't get to net zero by 2050 without substantial finance. Things need to be built. We need to get new infrastructure, new innovations. People need to be trained and, upskilled on different things. And that all takes investment. So the financial sector is incredibly important for us to get there. So I really like to use this kind of training to upskill people in that space, but more around the opportunities of sustainable investment, and also the risks of doing nothing. So I think it's really important to show people that and to give them that content and fill those gaps, but then also kind of giving them the tools to move forward and empower them to use that huge influence that they do have. So yeah, I think that's why this kind of training is so important.
Yeah, that's a really good reflection on that. I mean, just exactly what you've said in terms of addressing the risks and the kind of the inaction of not doing anything now is going to have more problems later on. So yeah, really, really interesting insights there, Rachael. Thanks so much. And I suppose perhaps you can just maybe touch on a success story or an anecdote to highlight the kind of positive impact that carbon literacy's had so far across the different businesses and the different training that you've offered.
Yeah. So one of our first clients was Palatine Private Equity, who again I think you are going to talk to soon. So they basically set themselves a bit of a target to train up a couple of people from each portfolio company in carbon literacy. So at first we created a course for them and started rolling it out, and where they do invest in different sectors, we made some of the content quite bespoke for those sectors. And then once Palatine were happy and were comfortable with the whole process, we then gave them lots of resources so that they could roll the training out themselves. And it gave them lots of power to kind of go as big as they wanted to. And they have gone very big. So fast forward 2 years and they've actually trained up over 250 people, which is a huge achievement. And it's really great to see them succeed in that kind of way. And another kind of great thing that's come from that as well is a year after they started rolling the training out, they did have a lot of people saying that, you know, they were engaged now, they were aware, but they just didn't know what to do next. So we then set up a follow-on workshop with members of each portfolio company. We did it in person in Manchester, and it was great because people could collaborate together. And we went through a lot more of those practical details, particularly around action planning. And then a couple of weeks after that, people from these portfolio companies were given the opportunity to give their action plans to an expert at Anthesis and get feedback. So it's meant that Carbon Literacy has given the engagement, and then we've been able to take that and operationalize it. And now these companies are looking into decarbonisation, which is amazing. We also have another kind of great success story, which is more recent. So one of our more recent clients had a great session. We really enjoyed working with them. They were very engaged. They were very kind of all up for discussing everything. And a few of them actually put in their declarations that they're going to start campaigning for their organization to set science-based targets. And you know, science-based targets are very ambitious, and they're what we would love everyone to set, because hypothetically, if everyone in the world had a science-based target, we would stay within 1.5 degrees of warming, we'd achieve the Paris Agreement. And with this being a financial institution, that would be incredible, because it kind of sets off a chain reaction. So they would need to ask their clients to decarbonize so that they could achieve their own goals. Their clients would then ask their suppliers to decarbonize, and it kind of goes down the supply chain all the way down to the start. And where this particular client was in quite a high emission space, that could be huge when it comes to decarbonisation. So they're quite early days, so we don't know what will happen next, but we're really excited to see what comes next for them.
It just goes to show you the power of education, the kind of power of this kind of education, and the domino effect that it can have in a sector like this. So I think that's that's so informative and really interesting, and we need to kind of keep that momentum going, as it were. So I suppose the last question that I've had, can you describe any of the more courses that you have on the horizon?
Yeah. So where Anthesis works one-on-one with organisations and make those bespoke courses, we can't talk too much about the individual courses that are coming up, I'm afraid. But one update we do have is to the way that we deliver carbon literacy as a whole. So I mentioned this e-learning that we do, and at the moment we just make it kind of bespoke for organisations, so it'll have their branding, their strategy, that kind of thing. And it works really well because it gets that engagement going, but it isn't too accessible for smaller organisations or organisations that just want to train kind of a small group. So we're now looking at making a more generalised version of this e-learning that can be accessible for everyone. And that will sit on a really exciting new platform that we've got called the Anthesis Activator Academy. So it'll sit within lots of different courses that we have on there. And it will mean that organisations with less people to train can do that. And then we will do a bespoke workshop to follow on. So we will still dig into what it means for them. We'll get them to plan and to see what the future might hold. But it means that they can get that flexibility without the big commitment of their own e-learning. And it's kind of helping us spread carbon literacy to all, which is really exciting.
That's amazing. It sounds like you're going to be quite busy, which is good, and offering again a lot more. And it's been absolutely fantastic to talk to you today, Rachel. Thank you so much for your insights. I hope everyone else watching has had, has learned just as much as I have. And it's really exciting to learn more about your courses and the vision that you've got for carbon literacy as well. So thank you so much again. Please, everyone, tune in for the next video that will talk a bit more about carbon literacy within this sector. And again, it's really good to get your insights into how a training and an education piece of this kind could land in this sector, and the kind of domino effect that will have in terms of reducing carbon emissions as well. So thank you so much again, Rachel.
Thank you.